Hello, my name is Dolly Rabbit, an artist, graphic designer, and player in Zamen's game in this series. I wanted to take a moment of your time to say that in this video, I gave Zamen permission to use art of the group that I drew 2 years ago. What I wish to say is this art is old and not indicative of my current skill level or quality. If you wish to see my art at its best, please head to the description of the video, where you can find my Twitter, where I share my projects that I'm working on, mostly visual novels if you're fond of them. Now that that's out of the way, please sit back, relax, and enjoy the Persona Tabletop RPG recap series.
Hiya, I'm a Zamen, and I like tabletop RPGs such as Monster of the Week, Mutants and Masterminds 3rd Edition, Pokemon Tabletop United, and this niche one called Dragons and Dungeons. Anyway, none of those matter. We can just throw them out with the yeah, never mind, they can stay. Moving on to the main point, I want to talk about the fan-made Persona tabletop system, which I ran for a good few years as the lovely little game master. In fact, it was the first ever campaign I ever ran, and it was quite odd. I've asked one of my former players to provide a quote, and she shot back with this message: context, collars, not on dogs. Fades to black. Just one more thing. Zamen, desperate. Fades to black! So, yeah, we'll get there eventually. The art used here to represent several important characters was made by the wonderful Dolly Rabbit, one of my players at the time, and on 51, an artist who I have commissioned quite a bit. You'll also have some of my poorly drawn artwork to represent most NPCs because I don't want to steal from artists I cannot properly credit, and also ones where I don't have their permission. All of that out of the way, let me tell you the tale of Persona Storm of Chords. Time is ever moving. All will eventually reach the same end. You that has the potential to defend the future, however soon it will arrive. Each of you has been given 1 year. Go forth, without hesitation, and you may avert the day of misfortune. The September Arc, Principle of Loss. Set in the town of Downpour, a coastal city in the United States bordered by the states of California, Texas, Pennsylvania, Florida, and Kansas. Our story follows a group of high school students who are transferring in from out of state and country to live at the dormitory of Tempest Vocational High School. Our player cast is as follows: Benito, the Hanged Man, and his persona Dullahan, a 17-year-old with a passion for street fighting and a chronic addiction to gambling. Tadao, the Fool, and his persona Chupacabra, a 16-year-old who, So all I have regarding this character is a DM from the original player that says, I want to be the school shoe plus tar pit. Then we have Liv, the Death Arcana, and his persona Viv. He's 15 years old and a cat boy, a real one. Leonidas Regulus, the Empress Arcana, and his persona Laplace Demon, a 16-year-old boy genius played by an actual rocket scientist who's very logical and straightforward. He's also basically the leader / brains of the team, and typically works to solve problems. He also holds grudges, but can be quite refined. Oh, and he's the Canadian heir to the sorta Illuminati, but lighthouse related. Lucia, the Hermit Arcana, and her persona Fidel Castro, a 16-year-old tech genius and professional shut-in streamer that is solely set on getting rich. She also has glass bones and paper skin. Stallion, the Lover's Arcana, and his persona Divine. The oldest of the group at 21-ish, he's the resident healer and easily the sassiest of the group. But he's reliable and in most cases lends an ear to listen. Among the party, he's easily the social butterfly and has great control over his emotions. He's one to either start or solve problems, but you always want to have him on your side. Also, he's rich and French, so what more do you need? Introductions out of the way, let me be honest, those first few sessions were bad. Very bad, not good at all. How do I know? Simple. Liv dropped out the end of session 1 and did not speak for its entirety. Tadao was kicked out after session 3 for trying to start PvP, dropping the N-word several times, and pissing on things. Well, yeah, there's not much else to say. Benito then dropped out after missing session 3 because he really wasn't feeling it. Also, Stallion and Lucia did not show up for the first session, so we can skip them for now. And Leonidas, let me tell you, he was a delight. No complaints. Other than the fact I really wish I could have kept up with that guy's brain. Now, these first few sessions were filled with awkward introductions. Everyone was a stranger online, and I had never DM'd a game before in my life and was also recovering mute. I was not a social person. During these bad sessions, the players met a guy named Leon Lenz, who was pretty much a friendless loser, but liked to gamble. He was the Fortune Arcana. I'm creative. They also met a guy named Monty, the Devil Arcana, but he was erased from existence by the end of session 4. After meeting Leon and Monty, the then players were called into the principal's office and fell into the other world, into what I called a domain. But everyone else just called it a dungeon. I kinda gave up correcting them and joined in at the midway point of the campaign. This domain was a mystical forest of sadness full of bright colors. Here they were being attacked by demons, literal demons. Moments before they would all die, everyone's soul manifested as a brilliant yellow orb of light descending from on high. Each of them were then told this by an otherworldly voice. A day of misfortune has fallen upon you. Should you continue as you are now, the choices before you are either wallowing in sadness or fretting in worthless anger. Yet if you now take hold of your present will, you can stand against misfortune and tip the scales. Will thou accept my aid? In that case, I am thou, and thou art I. I am Fidel Castro, or Laplace Demon, or Divine. So they beat up the demons and found a way out of the domain, arriving at the Velvet's Room, which in this adventure is a train car. Something interesting to note is that the players don't have full access to the Velvet Room. They can only use basic functions like fusing items or fusing skills, but can't fuse personas, as something called the Wild Card is not among them. Also, this is the attendant. Her name is Moritz. She's like Diet Elizabeth. And that's where session 1 ended off. And I'll be skipping sessions 2 and 3 because those were bad, and I said why earlier. Let's step out of the in-game events and focus on the changing player dynamics, by which I mean how my main cast kind of imploded. I lost over half my players by the end of session 3, from 6 to 3, so what did I do? Replace them, and I did it by making a 5-step plan. Step 1, make an ad. Step 2, ask my remaining players if they knew anyone interested. Step 3, scale down the number of players from 6 to 4. Step 4, accept the player Dolly Rabbit had roped into this. We'll call her Ghost. Step 5, accept the random guy who replied to my ad with open arms and no interview. We'll call him Lunar. Step 6, realize I messed up my own plan. But yeah, so another thing I should mention is that at this time, I suffered from this medical issue. An issue called having no backbone. I was a complete pushover. I did not have a semblance of confidence at that point, and I could not say no to save my life. Which is how Tadao's player got in, despite the urine. It was only with the urging of Dolly Rabbit that I kicked the bad egg. So yeah, I sucked. But let's introduce our 2 new cast members. Felicia Flab, the Judgment Arcana and her persona Weltschmerz. Ghost character who got in legitimately. Felicia is a 17-year-old girl from Australia who was childhood friends with the character Stallion. She's also rich, has a gun, and occasionally looks like a Barbie doll. And, out of the entire party, she's probably the most volatile, because she is either hyper competent or adds fuel to the fire. Then we have Aki Minato, the Justice Arcana and his persona Sherlock Holmes. If you can't tell, he's the protagonist, age 16 and from Japan. Aki aspires to solve crimes and one day end his father's Yakuza regime. Overall, I'd have to say he's probably the best character in the entire game. Throughout the campaign, the players and I joked about him being the protagonist, but he kinda was. Because Aki throughout the story is the glue that holds the entire party together. Despite being a last-minute addition I didn't plan on, Aki is the pillar of the entire game, and easily the most heroic, and also the most misfortunate. So that's our final cast for a good while. Leonidas, the brainy one, Stallion, the talky one, Lucia, the streamy one, Felicia, the gunny one, and Aki, the hero-y one. Now the story can truly begin. So session 4, with this new party and every player in attendance for the first time, what did we do? Get personas, because at that point only Leonidas had a persona, and that was kind of awkward. Session 5. Things get interesting. The party is adjusting to living under the same roof, as it's a dormitory, but there's an extra empty room at the end of the hall that's already occupied, but its resident has been absent for the entire time. It's an NPC the party has never met before, until now, as we introduce Sky Severa, the Sun Arcana. 16 years old, white hair, Sky will be an important figure later on as both a love interest and an ally. She's a girl who's indifferent to most things but is easy enough to get along with, also typically called goth by the party. She also has her own interests, such as the hit Japanese TV show Featherman Omega, sequel to Featherman Zero. Following this, the party explored the town's shoreline, where they encountered an odd character or two. Introducing Old Man Winchester, the Tower Arcana. A man in his mid-50s who sits solemnly atop a lamppost, fishing day in and day out. He refuses to speak to anyone and sits in quiet sadness. Also, by the shoreline, the party also discovered an old tank surrounded by litter. This litter was being cleaned up by Officer Amelia Sycamore, the Temperance Arcana, an officer who strives more out of her career, wanting to do bigger and better things, like solve homicide cases alongside her superiors. She can be a strict person, but is easy to talk to and has a habit of humoring people even when they probably don't deserve it. And yes, you heard me earlier, there's a tank, a literal tank, right by the beach next to the sewer drainage pipes. Surrounded by loads of trash is just a rusty old tank that's been there for years and no one's removed it. Leonidas, local boy genius, takes a special interest in this tank and wants to do something about it by first cleaning up all the litter, an endeavor that takes a while, a whole 2 weeks in fact. Along with that, Leo attaches a grenade launcher and a sword to a Roomba, creating what will eventually become the Aeon Arcana. But that's not all, because after exploring town and going to class, the party hears a rumor from Sky, something about a jester game, telling them that supposedly, if you gather together at exactly 1:23 AM and scrawl the words Jester, Jester, change it all, grant my wish and give me fortune, into the bathroom mirror and add a single droplet of blood, the jester himself will appear and grant you your wishes. So naturally the party does it, but Sky, wanting nothing to do with it, hightails it out of there before they begin. But not before informing the party that in 3 weeks' time, on October 15th, there will be a dorm check by school staff. So the party conducts the jester ritual, and in an instant, reality distorts. The map's colors inverts, and before them arises a man out of fog. A rather tall and built man clad in a suit, wearing an odd mask. He steps forward, introducing himself as Jester, the one who can change fortune. Yet behind Jester looms a taller being, an inhuman one, his persona, Dogda. The party instantly fumbles and reveals that they can see his persona, with Stallion in particular saying something along the lines of, "Hey sister, why's your gimp following you around like that?" While everyone else kept asking, "What's your arcana? Hey, what's your arcana? Wait, what's your arcana? Are you the Fool Arcana? Huh? Are you the Aeon Arcana?" It was a little annoying. Realizing they can see his persona, Jester drops the genie facade and makes some demands, growing hostile, causing the party to try and fight with their personas, only to be easily beaten down, destroying the bathroom door and shattering several windows. Then, instead of granting their wishes, the Jester asks the party to grant his wish. He wants them to venture into the domain and kill the demon, or he'll kill them. They have until October 5th. For he'll be back on that night. With that, he leaves the party shell-shocked and with a mission. Naturally, after this endeavor, Felicia tries to call her parents. They do not pick up. The party has a deadline of 15 days to reach the deepest part of the other world within the principal's office in order to kill the demon. They also have to repair the dorms before the check-in, along with somehow figuring out what's going on. The party proceeds to spend a full week doing nothing domain related. They kinda sorta sit around and form bonds with NPCs like losers. Felicia starts to regularly talk to Officer Amelia by asking questions relating to firearm discharge. Stallion attempts to get to know Old Man Winchester by trying, and failing, to climb the lamppost for several days. Aki Minato begins chatting up Sky by inquiring about where she's been going these late nights, but doesn't get far. Lucia kinda sorta mostly spends her time streaming and pulling up records on the rest of the cast, hermit for life after all. While Leonidas began regularly talking with Leah, the most normal person in the entire campaign. Speaking of Leah, she's the Priestess Arcana, an introverted first-year student who wants to help her brother stop being a loser, but lacks the confidence to ever really tell him off or help him improve. She's also a member of the student council, but that's not important until October. However, finally, on October 2nd, 3 days before their deadline, the party returns to the domain and fights their way to the end, reaching the penultimate room where they encounter a girl named Alice, the manifestation of the principal's recently deceased daughter who died in late August. A fierce battle against the clock ensued as the party had spent far too much time inside the domain, summoning the Reaper who was en route to kill every single one of them if they could not beat Alice in time. Yet, just in the nick of time, after refusing to die to her, the party strikes Alice down and fled, but not before grabbing loot. Aki narrowly avoiding an attack from the Reaper to grab a stuffed bear. The fragile concept of their mortality bearing down upon them, Stallion promptly went up and visited Legitimate Larry's legitimate real estate in order to potentially buy an aircraft hangar to live in. Here's the specs. And Felicia tried to call her parents. They did not pick up. 2 days later, before their deadline, the party entered the domain for the final time and fought the principal in his new demon form, Arimon, who started off looking like this, and then transformed into this. Now, he could have been saved, but the party kinda sorta beat him up real good. Bashing him with brass knuckles, shooting him with a gun, whipping a Nokia phone at him, slashing with a sword, and using an Amazon flamethrower, until finally he was defeated. The party had done it. They killed the demon and satisfied the conditions of Jester. But they didn't learn anything. By this point, the principal was nothing more than a mindless demon, unable to offer any insight, and without being saved, his information was lost for good. They were left to ponder what's the nature of the other world. How did any of this happen? What's going on with the principal, and why did no one seem to care that he was missing for a full month? With no answers, the party decided to follow Lucia's example and become streamers! And that's where we'll end for now. Sorry, but this video's getting a bit long. And I am but one Zamen who really doesn't want to edit a 3-hour long video. Also, I'm sorry that a lot of this video is just character introductions, but I need to get them out of the way. Thank you for watching, and I hope you found this interesting. Join me again in 4 weeks when I'll continue this story, because next week I want to talk about DC superheroes. Sorry. Regardless, if you don't hate my voice, please consider sticking around, because my sole goal here is to improve my writing, editing, and speaking.